to our webinar today. I am Molly Farah, Director of Child and Youth Protection for the Diocese of Joliet. And we have two other presenters with us today, Pat Neal from Virtus and Julie Burke from Selection.com. They will be going over our new program that we're implementing here at the Diocese for you to maintain your safe environment records. If you have questions, the chat feature is on. So those who are joining us by webinar can type in their questions. Those who are live here in the room, we have pads of paper at your tables. You can write down your questions and we'll come around and collect them. Okay. If we are also going to stay here after the seminar, so that if people have individual questions they'd like to ask, we will be available for that. This event is being recorded, so it will be available on the Virtus website shortly. How long will that take us? Like a day or two?
Should be a day or two.
A day or two, we'll have that up on the website if you want to look at any of this again. I also want to remind those who are joining us in the room that this is a live webinar, so your conversations can be heard by those who are joining us through the web. Okay. With that, I'd like to introduce Pat Neal with Virtus.com.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I'm Pat Neal from the Virtus programs. Just a little bit about us. We do manage the program out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. However, our main office, National Catholic Services, is right up the road in Lisle, Illinois. So it's good to be here. I'm going to go ahead and start. What we're going to review today certainly is for new users, the registration process and the new functions related to that process. And then we're also going to review where the volunteers are seamlessly led to submit a background check with Selection.com, and Julie will review that as well. And also what functions you'll have as a local administrator, not only in the applicant entry within Selection.com, the background check information, but also within the Virtus platform, additional online functionalities that you'll have with these updates. So what I'm going to do first is go ahead and get started and go directly to, I'm going to go right to the diocesan website. And I'm going to go ahead and register as an employee to start. We are going to have this also, the registration instructions in Spanish as well. So we'll be providing that information. And again, what we're working on right now is for new users that have not registered in Virtus for an upcoming session. And I'm going to start with the employees. So we will have a link within the, for the registration instructions, but for now, just like you probably did when you registered for an upcoming session, I'm going to click on virtus.org. And then from here, I'm going to first log out. I'm going to sign in as a first-time registrant, begin the registration process. I'm going to choose Joliet from this drop-down list. And just know, again, eventually we'll have a link which should take them right to this page here, which is specific to the Diocese of Joliet and allowing you to create a user ID and password. So I'm going to go ahead and click one. So this is my user ID and password as a new registrant, and continue. One thing that we added to the personal information page is because we're doing background checks, we want to make sure that if I'm Robert, right? And I go by Bob as a nickname. I want to make sure I'm putting Robert in as my first name. So it says, please enter your name as it appears on your driver's license, passport, or other government issued ID. So what's nice here is they'll put in their full name, but there is a box now for a nickname. So that just gives you as local administrators a little more information about the person. So I'm just going to do a test here. I'm going to go up to 30 because I've been testing a lot. So, okay, copy. Okay, so this information here, just their personal information. The birth date has been added because that's going to transfer to the background check provider site. So that way, that information is going to be key information when creating a background check. The next is, the one thing we really try to stress is to not select your location of training, which I'm sure you all have experienced this as local administrators, that someone will put their training location as opposed to their primary location where they work or volunteer. So we hope we make this a little clearer on the site to where they're actually, where do you work or volunteer? So I'm going to click here. I'm going to click on All Saints Catholic Academy. So this looks a little different now, probably from when you registered. So these are the primary roles that are being tracked, primarily kind of, you know, in sync with what the USCCB requirements are. But so we have priest, seminarian, deacon, and as you can see, everything has got a little bit of information about what is an educator within the Diocese of Joliet, for example. So I'm going to choose here, employee. And under the employee, the two employee primary roles, there's going to be additional roles to select if they apply. So employee contractor, substitute teacher, after school staff, or musician. So the person has the ability to select that as their secondary role. I'm going to continue here. And then have you chosen, are you associated with any other locations? This is where they would add additional locations as well. These are standard questions that we've always had, that if you registered, you would have answered these questions, just kind of related to your ongoing contact with minors or vulnerable adults. Now we have where you'll acknowledge the policy electronically, the registrant will. So this one is the policy regarding sexual abuse of minors. And it is in scroll format, so the person never has to leave the screen. There is the ability, however, to actually download this in a PDF format, which is right here, if they want a copy to save on their site, for example. So I hereby acknowledge that I've downloaded, read, and understand the attached document. They're going to put in their name to acknowledge electronically, and then today's date. It has to be actually today's date for this to complete. So I'm going to continue here. Oh, see, today's date. What is today's date? Today's the 18th.
Yes.
So we're going to do that one more time. Okay, so first name. And then I'm going to put today's date. Okay. And then continue. So now these are the standards of behavior for those working with minors that they're going to read and acknowledge. So I'm going to click the box here and name and then today's date. Okay, and then continue. Have you already attended a Virtues Protecting God's Children? Yes or no? Now, most generally, people are pre-registering for an upcoming session, right? But there are those that you have walk-ins, and then they're going to post-register. So regardless of what they choose here, if they're post-registering for the session, they're still going to get the additional screens that they need. I'm going to select no, that I'm going to attend an upcoming session, and then choose the session to attend. And okay. So this is what the employees are going to see. If you are a new employee applicant, please contact the hiring manager for instructions to be fingerprinting. So at this point, they are not being led to complete a background check. So this is going to be for the employees, the volunteers. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. Okay, so now we're going to register as a volunteer. Again, first time registrant. Begin the registration process. Selecting Joliet. And again, we do have registration instructions that will lead the person right to this screen. So I'm just going to go through this as a volunteer. And again, feel free to ask questions on the chat feature or here in the live audience. I'll have 2 J's on that just to make it easier. And then continue. And this time I'm going to select a volunteer so you see what the volunteer applicant will see. With a volunteer, there are additional secondary roles that can be chosen as well. I'll just put volunteer other. And then any other locations, I'm going to select no. Again, the reason we're doing this now, we are actually tying locations to roles now going forward. You may have already seen this within the general tab when you're looking at users within your administrative rights. The whole key is to maintain the history of the person. So if they leave and we'll review this functionality, but we want to make sure that if it's very important here that you can maintain the history, that like they're no longer within my parish or school, I'm going to inactivate them, but I'm going to save the history. So now I know that this person is a volunteer in this location and then maybe an educator in this other location. So that's new to the program. All right, so I'm going to answer these questions and acknowledge the document. And then continue. And again, here's the second standards of behavior to sign off on. Okay. So the only time that you can enter a date other than today is if you live in Guam. I'm just kidding. We actually had set up in Guam and we were having trouble. People couldn't acknowledge, and it's because their time zone's so far ahead of us. So we had to open up that for them. So I'm going to say no here and then select the session. And those at Sacred Heart, if you're seeing a lot of registrations, we will delete these test records. Okay. So now this is what you're going to see, or the registrant will see, a new volunteer to submit a background check. So what we want to make sure, again, is that they have submitted their full legal name. So this is another opportunity for them to enter their full legal name so it doesn't get caught up in an issue. We will have another blue box here because this is where they're actually going to start the Fast Tracks process. So by clicking this button, you'll be directed to their secure website called Fast Tracks. So as soon as I click this button as a new volunteer, I'm going to be seamlessly led to Fast Tracks to submit my background check. So I'm going to hand it over here now to Julie, who's with Selection.com, and she's joining us today. So I'm going to see if I can get her logged in here. Let's see here. So, okay, so Julie, can you hear us okay?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes. So I'm going to go
Great.
I'm going to go ahead and start. You can just let me know when to proceed.
Okay, sounds great. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Julie Burke, and I'm the Vice President of Sales here at Selection.com. Just a little bit about us. We're based in Cincinnati, Ohio. We are a veteran-owned Catholic faith-based background screening company, and we currently work with over 70 dioceses throughout the United States. So with that said, we are on Fast Tracks right now, where Pat has explained it will take your volunteers directly here to our site. So at this point, all they'll need to do is click on Enter Background Check Info. Once that button is clicked, Selection.com is considered a consumer reporting agency. Therefore, we must comply with the Fair Credit Reporting Act. What this form is it is a release form now that they will sign in an electronic format. So in the past, I'm sure you've had them fill out a paper form giving consent to run the background check. Now they're going to be able to do this in electronic format by simply clicking on I agree. Once they click on I agree, they cannot change their first or last name. This is for security purposes. I did give them an option on the screen before if they needed to send an email to whomever at the parish or school, letting them know that that is not their legal name. But remember, this name is coming over from Virtus, So the name and the date of birth will pre-populate. At this time, only the red fields are mandatory. So we will need them to put in a social security number, their street number, and then street address, and then a type if they have, a avenue or whatever that might be. Then, of course, the zip code, the city, and the state. And then at that time, the far right bottom, it will give them the option to go ahead and hit next. We really don't need, the phone, the cell. They can put notes in if they'd like, but really it's just the red fields are the mandatory fields. Once they've done that, this is where they will physically sign the release form. Same verbiage as the front page. We put it in both places. It's just on this page is where they will sign and give their consent by putting in their first initial and their last name. We do explain how to do this under signature. I can't tell you how many phone calls we get of applicants that are putting in, the full first name or just merely not following the directions. But all we need is the first initial, last name, and the last 4 digits of their social. At that time, they'll hit next. And then this gives them an opportunity to review their information. They can make sure they put their correct social or the date of birth, address. And if everything is correct, at the bottom far right, they would hit submit. If they would like a free copy on themselves as well, they can just check the box and we'll email them a copy of their background check. This is their property. So, they're more than welcome to get a copy of it or give us a call. And we do have strict procedures in place in order to give that information over to them. At that point, you would click on Submit Request. And then it's finished. You can just close out this box or it'll automatically close out in 2 minutes. And it reads your request has been successfully submitted. So that's it. It's that easy for an applicant. Our website was created by our clients to make sure that it is very seamless. And what I'd like to do now, so that was all what an applicant, volunteer, or current employee would experience. I'm going to head over to applicant entry. So this is where you as, safe environment coordinator or whomever will be, entering these background checks, pushing them through will go. So the first step, we'll go ahead and go to the next page, is you will receive, you'll click on Fast Tracks and you will receive a secure username and password. I know Christina and Susan currently are sending those over to you as we speak. So you will be getting an encrypted email. If you've never opened an encrypted email before, you will need to create a password in order to open the email. Then in the body of our email, you will find your secure username and password in order to be able to log on to this site. If for any reason you're having issues, please feel free to contact us here at the office. And they are also attaching to that email this presentation right now that I'm going through. So we'll go ahead and click the next slide. So client login is where you will log in. At that point, once again, you'll have your own secure username and password. You would then click on login. And then at that time, it's going to take you directly to our dashboard. So I like to call this our dashboard because you're seeing a lot of information here as far as the information that will go to a pending status, what will become a new result. You'll have all the applicants' names lined up there and the date and time stamp that they were submitted. Also, if for any reason you would like to pay your invoice online, you'll see to the right of View Reports, New Request Payables, you would be able to click on Payables and pay your invoice with a credit card, or we'll bill you on the 1st and 15th of each month via email, and you'll mail us a check, or you can just give us a credit card to keep on file here. So at that point, where you're going to click Next, we'll go ahead and hit Next, is applicant entry. So you're going to simply click on applicant entry. And at that point, it's going to take you directly to the applicant entry dashboard. You will see status, and it's going to read hold. Your goal here is for status to read submitted. It is not going to be submitted until you take it off hold and submit the request through. So in order to be able to do this, we'll go ahead and move to the next slide, is you will click on Review Submit. When you click on Review Submit, it's going to take you directly to what all the information that the applicant, and when I refer to an applicant, volunteer, or an existing employee, is putting into the system. So at this time, if you see that a social's wrong, their date of birth is incorrect, their city, their state, you are able to change this information and update it. So this is kind of a quick way of you being able to double check the work that this volunteer has entered into the system. At this time, you would then hit next, right there with the next button. So once you hit next, it takes you to report data, and you're just going to leave that alone. This is basically just the state that they currently live in. So you would hit next again. And then you'll see it takes you to the notification tab. You will see your name and anyone else that is a user on your account. If you would like an email confirmation when this report is completed, we can send that to you. You will not be able to view the information. That's only going to be on a diocesan level. So it's up to you if you want this notification. You will need to come back in here, though, to push these requests through and take them off hold in order for them to get entered into our system. So next step would then again to be hit next. Once again, if you wanted to highlight a name, and then we will hit next again. And then it's going to take you to the review. So you can see the tabs. We started on the report service, the application, the report data, notification, and now we are on the review tab. Once again, gives you an option to make sure that everything is correct. If for any reason it is not, please use our back button that is blue on the far right rather than using your browser, which would log you out potentially. And then at this point, you would hit next, yep, which is at the bottom. So go ahead and scroll down, and there's your submit. So you would simply click on submit, and then it's telling you it's completed successfully. So if you'd like, you can be finished here, or we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. If you click on View Reports, it will show you, we'll go ahead to the next one. Once you click on it, it's going to now show you in that orange box that you have one pending request. You're going to see the little square next to Sarah Test to the left. You'll see a percentage. So that will start changing from 0 to 50 or whatever it might be, depending on how many components. Once it reaches 100%, that pending will then go to a new result. At that point, the request is completed. We'll go ahead to the next slide. And you can always check on your applicant dashboard, and you will be able to see now the status on the far left is in a submitted status, not a hold status. So the whole goal here is for you to enter this request through once it comes in. And then that requires you to submit it. And really, if everything looks correct, all you're doing is hitting next, next, next. Once you're reviewing it, hit submit at the end and you're finished. So it's a very easy process. It's very seamless. It is allowing you, to double check, make sure, another thing could be make sure this individual is within your parish or schools. So it's just a double check for another set of eyes to look at the information that the volunteers entered in through the system. And that's everything I have.
Thank you. And we'll kind of watch and monitor if anybody has any questions or anything through the chat feature that we can ask Julie. I think we do have one question.
Yeah, I see that. You are going to have to log on to the site. I am going to look into seeing if there's any way we could build some type of email notification. Currently, we don't have that today. So I would recommend coming into this site just to quickly view and see if you have anything on hold. As a principal, you will have access. Oh, okay, that's Molly.
And this question is probably for Molly. What if your volunteer catechist background check is current?
If you have someone who is currently a volunteer and their background check is current, so their 5-year renewal isn't up for another 2 or 3 years, then we do not need to run this background check just yet. We will push that through in 2 or 3 years when their 5-year term is up. But they will get a notification indicating that it's time for a renewal and for them to go to this site and sign off on all the waivers.
Okay, and the second is, what if a volunteer or person takes a leave for a year, do they have to re-enter?
No. If someone is a volunteer and then becomes inactive for a period of time, we can inactivate the account. And then when they return, we can reactivate the account. And if it's within that 5-year time period, that their background check is still good. Yes, you'll be able to inactivate an account. This would not delete the account. All the information in there will remain as it is. The account will simply be inactive. That's correct. Someone can have an account without having gone through the fast track system.
So, and just kind of follow up to that, which we'll share here in the next few moments, as far as the local administrator, the rights that you will have to have the ability to prompt a background check right from the Virtus platform. So we'll review that. Any other questions for Julie? Okay. Thank you, Julie. Let's see.
Sure.
Okay. So now I'm going to switch to the Virtus as a local administrator. So what we just talked about certainly was the registration process for new volunteers and new employees going through the registration process. And even if somebody has never registered in Virtus before, but they did attend a session at that point, they are still going to register and post-register for that session. So I'm going to click on, you all would have access to the administration tab as a local administrator. And really what I just want to review are just some of the new features that you'll have access to. So the first thing that I want to start with is you now will have the ability to search the entire diocesan platform. So any user in the Virtus system that's within the Diocese of Joliet. Now for your own locations, you will have the ability to edit, but you will not have the ability to edit outside of your location, but you can see the record. So I'm just going to type in Julie here and go. We will have instructions on this as well. We're working on registration or local administrator, a guide for you specifically. And what we'll do is probably post that on the site as well, on the Virtus under administration. But then working with Molly and Maria to make sure that it continually updates as needed. So we'll make everything that I'm going through today, you will have access to within this guide to review. So this person, Julie, this first one is not actually in my location. And how I know that is when I scroll down, I have no way to save or edit any information for this particular person because she is in, I'm not going to say this right, but in Glen Ellen, Petronell, St. Petronell. And so I can look at the information, but I can't make any changes to the information. And we'll be sharing with you how you can actually update and add locations and roles. So within this here, you can actually add Julie to your location. So by doing that, I'll just double check on this, making sure that I'm going to go ahead and select this and then I'll just delete it. So I'm going to say All Saints. And let me see if I can even save it. I'm going to say volunteer and save. And you can see where it allowed me to add that location, but I can only edit this location. I cannot edit anyone in St. Petronell because that is not my location to make any adjustments to. And just know that the user at any time can go to the, log into their site and actually update their own information. And so here is where they would update and tie their locations to roles from this section right here. So if you were logging in as a user, not as a local administrator, they would go, they could see, and you can see this too, but update my account in the upper right corner, or under training, update my account, and also under the toolbox, update my account. So we give multiple ways for someone to update their personal information. So you can always direct the user to log into their account. So if the person is within your location, I'm just going to click on users here. And this is going to pull up all your local users that are active in the system. So as you can see here, I have one person. This is a test account awaiting approval, and then pre-registered users. And as you're aware, you can always look up any pre-registered users by clicking on the left-hand side here. And these are all users that are awaiting approval. As you can see, they're test registrations at this point. I'm going to click on this pre-registered user just to give you an example of what you can see. Because now they're registering, and now as a volunteer, they're actually submitting a background check. So this person registered. You can see their information. They're a volunteer. They actually they said they're attending the session on February 22nd. And you can see a completed background check here. So you know that this person has already, because it's about a 48-hour turnaround, right, to complete a background check. So this one's already completed. And I can actually view this information on here. So I can see that this person was submitted on 2/17 and yes, completed. And so let me get back to my slide here. Get back to Virtus. Whoops. Okay. So I'm already logged in. So if the other option that it gives you, this when I was talking about if somebody needs a background check and they don't have a background check, even within pre-registered users, you're going to have the ability to click on what's called force background check prompt for this user. So if they do not have a background check, or their background check did not submit and it says no, you will have the ability to force background check prompt. And what will happen when you click on this right here, it's going to send a message to that individual as long as there is an email address attached, and it'll tell them to please log back in to complete the background check. So you don't even have to really let them know. The system will actually send out a message to them. Once they do submit it, it'll come back and it'll probably say pending first. And then once that's completed, it gets pushed to Virtus that the background check is completed. So that's under pre-registered users as well as new user sign up. You have the ability here as well to kind of check and see if they have a completed background check. If not, you can force background check that prompt. And then you can also do this with required documents. Remember, we acknowledged the documents, right? So I'm going to click here to view what I acknowledged, and I can see that on 2/18 that this registrant did acknowledge those documents. If they didn't and it's missing, you could actually there'll be a force background check prompt once the record is activated so you can actually force send those out to them as well. So any questions we're doing good. Okay, good. So I'm going to click back on users. So these are my active users, and I want to show you under this local administrator account. So again, you as the local administrator, right, for your own location or locations will have the ability to update the information of the individual. And let's say that there's no email address here, like this is not even a valid email address, right? You can always update the email address for them and then email account information to them, which will send an email to them saying, here is your user ID. and here's password recovery. So that's just by clicking here. So updating email address is ideal, and it also allows you within here to update and save information. For example, you do have the ability to change the profile and the continuing training status on the individual as needed. And here, again, you can add role or location. This here, we probably will be doing some, oh, good. So this allows you to add a person to another location. One thing about this role to location, if you inactivate or remove, let's say this person doesn't belong to me, right? So this person's in here wrong. I can click on this end or delete the role and actually remove without even saving the history. Because let's say that, you know, they chose their primary location as their training location, which is not correct. You can actually delete them from here, and you can then add the proper location. Once you do that, however, if you remove your location and add the other parish location or school location, you can no longer then make updates to that record. Does that make sense? So basically, it's just a way to, if somebody is in there incorrectly, a way for you to update that record.
Can we clarify that if someone is simply inactive at a parish,
Yes.
to just add the
Yeah. So if somebody's inactive and they're no longer active in your site, you can actually click here and then click on the date and then just set, and it'll put this person in an inactive status for that particular role and location. And it can be just the role. Like all I inactivated was that it was a volunteer other. And if you want to totally inactivate this person's record, you would actually, see if I have that in here, inactivate here. But there is going to be a way that I will work with Molly and Maria to where we'll provide instruction how you can totally inactivate a record. Is that correct? We are going to have that ability. Okay. So what will happen is eventually you will have access to in here an inactive status to where you'll be able to fully inactivate the record. So we'll put that within the guide, because we just need to verify that you have that ability, and we'll make that very clear on how to fully inactivate a record. Because you know that Archdiocese of Chicago is very close, right? So somebody may be volunteering here, they move to the Archdiocese of Chicago, so we then at our office will actually transfer the record. Once we transfer the record out of Joliet or into Joliet, we notify both dioceses when that transfer is made. So that happens all the time. Okay. The next is contact information. You would have the ability to update the contact information for the individual. As you can see, there's no mailing information here. The background check. So what's happening here is you are going to have the ability under the background check tab to add past background checks information. So by clicking on record a background check for this user, you will have the ability, at least through December, to be able to utilize this platform by entering information that you have on an individual related to a background check or fingerprinting, and put it into the platform if it's not already there. To do that, I'm going to just click here. I'll click on First Advantage was this person's last background check. And then the date of that, and then this just defaults to your name if you're in here as the local administrator, and then you can update whatever information you need to add as a part of that record. But the main thing is putting that this person had a background check on this date or a fingerprinting on this date, and save that information. And now you've got that record within the system.
I would just like to add that all fingerprint reports up to this date, I will be entering that information into the background check on the platform. However, those who have already gone through name-based background checks with First Advantage or Premier InfoSource, that information is currently maintained at the parish, and so someone from the parish will have to input that information.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, and then you do and will have the ability, if somebody needs a background check, through selection.com, you do have access to the forced background check prompt right here. And again, that's going to send out an email to the individual to log in and submit a background check. That history actually gets recorded here, so you can always tell when it was prompted and at what date and by whom.
We have a question about individuals who may indicate an incorrect parish on their account and who gets billed for the background check. The invoice will go to the parish that pushes that background check through. Okay, so if you have somebody who registers and puts your parish as their primary, but they're not involved with your parish at all, don't push the background check through and you won't get the invoice for it. The individual will need to go in and change their location so that the correct parish can push that through. And then the invoice will go to that parish.
Under required documents, well, back to background check just to make sure. If you accidentally force background check to prompt, you can always reverse that back if they're not required. But just know that an email does go out to the individual if you do force background check, and it will ask them to log in to complete that background check. Okay, so under required documents, you can see that I actually did this through the self-registration when I did this test registration. You can, if there is no acknowledgement, you do have the ability to click on force required documents and it's going to send out the same email. One thing I'll say is sometimes when people register, they may get to their roles and locations, or they may get to the acknowledgement and they just totally click out of the system. Well, they can log back in and actually register for an upcoming session, right? So now you're missing two key pieces of information, that they've acknowledged the documents and then also did not complete a background check as a volunteer. So again, you're going to have the ability to prompt those checks. Under the training, which is what's normal here, is the training that was attended and the certificate that's always available. We have now the summary tab, and the summary tab just gives you an overview of all the compliance items. So the general information, the most recent training, most recent completed background check, and the most recent required document. And we'll be working again here just to make sure that anything that needs to be within the summary tab is there, including a caution, for example. So we'll be working together on making sure that anything that you need to see in an overview is going to be under the summary tab. So next is actually, how do you run the reports? We have a new report. Many of you may have been running the local level reports, right? So we have this new master report that was really created in 2019, is rolled into 2020. To get to that report, again, all you have to do is click on administration, and it's within the quick links. You also can click on compliance reports in the left-hand side. And from here, you can get to the new master report. What I like about the new master report is you can run all your locations. You can choose one location, and then you choose here. You can run by role as well, or multiple roles. So you choose what user fields you want to build within your report. And so I chose last name, first name, email address. I want to know what the account status is of the individual. And I normally will choose all locations. You can choose primary location, but the nice thing about all locations is you'll know if they're within another location, or you are a secondary location for a user. Does that make sense? So if you click just primary, you're only going to pull reports on those that have chosen your location as a primary location. So if you have all locations, it's going to include if they've selected you as a secondary location. So you can run it both ways. What is the role of the individual? I've selected here. As far as the background checks, you can actually select anything that applies, and it'll fill in each column. You can combine all selected background checks into one column, but you just have to remember what you have to click down here to make sure you're choosing the right selections. So for example, in this report, I'm just going to do selection.com, which is the provider today. Required documents. So I've got the policy regarding sexual abuse, standards of behavior. I'm going to go ahead and combine that into one column. You can separate it. You could have the policy under one and the standards on another column, but I just want to see under one column. Training, all I want to know about training at this point is, have they attended Protecting God's Children awareness? You can even pull in the bulletins as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and show all users because I want to know if anybody's inactive or pending or what status are they within my location. And you can run just actives as well, but I want to really show all users at this point. So I'm going to run report to screen, which allows you to drill right into the individual record. You can also export the report to CSV file. Once you export that to CSV, you would want to just save it into Excel. And so when you save it into Excel, it allows you to, of course, do sorting and pull the data that you need. Okay, so here you can see now I've got my first name, last name, email. What's the status, the account status? This is in pending status. And then what have I completed, or what these individuals have completed. So I know these two are pending, right? The reason they're pending is because they've not yet attended a session or their record has not been approved at this point. This active record here, attended training, completed the background check, and the required documents. So this is the key right here, is to eventually get to where all of those are filled in, right? So to be able to pull that report and just kind of scroll down and see, are there any missing, is there any missing information? I know why this information is missing here because this again, this pending status. But it's going to allow you to go and say, who does not have a background check, who needs information entered from a past background check. And you're going to do that through easily through the master report 2020. Any questions on how that is run? You still have access to the prior local level report. Again, the way this new master report runs, it does allow you a little more flexibility in running the report.
Want to make a comment? Regarding the master report, that will be very useful in completing your annual audit that we do every spring with Safe Environment. So we're going to give you until December to enter data. So if you have someone who doesn't need another background check for 2 or 3 years, we still want you to input their name, create an account, etc. We just won't push through a new background check on them. That way their information does get included in the master report, and then next year in 2021, you can use the master report to complete your annual audit for Safe Environment.
So that's primarily what the new information that you have access to as a local administrator. We're going to continue to update the reports to make sure, it provides you and guides you through what every aspect that you have access to as a local administrator in those functions. So you can really review your employees and volunteers and what's needed. So one other thing that I wanted to kind of just touch on is when you do prompt a background check, the one piece that has to be in there is their date of birth. And so we really weren't capturing that necessarily before. So the system, when you do prompt a background check, it's going to, if the person does not have a date of birth within their account, the system will ask for that date of birth before they submit a background check. Because that's the one piece that has to be there for the date of birth for that background check to run, or actually for it to even push to selection.com. So I kind of want to share that with you. But do you all have any questions about any functions within the Virtus platform?
We will be adding mandated reporter.
Yes. So we are going to be adding mandated reporter documentation. So we'll be working here in the office to make that accessible through the Virtus platform. Yes.
Person, or can there be more than one person to be able to access this information?
Okay. Currently, we have arranged for all Safe Environment coordinators, business managers, and principals to have administrative rights. Now, we can change that. If it should be somebody else at your parish, just give us a call. We can make arrangements for that.
Any other questions or thoughts or recommendations?
One more thought. For those who do not have computer access, we may have some older people who aren't computer savvy or what have you. They can come into your office and do it there. You can assist them with that, but someone needs to upload the information. You as a local administrator can only add a certain amount of information because ultimately when they get to the fast track system, they need to be the ones signing off and giving permission to do the background check. You can't sign off for them. So I encourage you to get in contact with those individuals and sit down with them and go through the process. Yeah.
After 5 years, right now all mine are up to date. After 5 years, have to go through this process, or should I just have them do it anyway, and then they'll be okay for the next 5 years?
Okay, the question is for those people who are current with their background checks, they don't need a background check for another 2, 3, 4 years. Have them create an account and at least get that part of the process completed. And then when they're due for a new 5-year background check, we'll put them into the fast track system. And at that point, once they're in fast track, that report is updated quarterly. So then you won't have to keep track of the 5-year renewal. Once they're in the fast track system, their background check will be run through the proprietary database every quarter.
So I'm understanding this correctly, everyone should go in and register anyway.
Yeah.
If they are registered, or not, they should be registered.
Yeah, the question is, should everybody register on Virtus? Absolutely. We want everybody's names in there.
You said that quarterly, you're going to check them, update quarterly. That means you'll only run 5 years. Or do it 5 years, you can run everybody's background check every quarter.
No, once a person's name is in the fast track system, their name will automatically run through the system 4 times a year through the national database. And that is included, the cost of that is already included in the initial background check. So once they're in the system, there is no need for further fees affiliated with that. So you'll pay one time for employees to do a fingerprint. And then when they go into the fast track system, there's a fee. And then that'll be it. No additional fees after that. Even after 5 years. Okay. If there is a hit, if there's something in their background that is of concern, I will continue to contact the individual parish and let you know if there's something of concern, if we need any restrictions on this individual. I'll continue to do that through through a letter system as we do now.
And Molly, this is Julie.
Yes, Julie.
And with that database, sometimes we may not have full case information, but Molly and I will discuss that because we may have to do further research if there's a hit, once again, through the quarterly watch.
Sometimes there is a limit or the information we get through the background is a little sketchy. So Julie's just saying that we can do further research on that.
Right. But your initial search will be, you know, the background check, county searches, federal, nationwide database, Social Security trace and validation, and the nationwide database with over 1 billion records housed in it.
Okay. Any other questions? We'll check the chat, make sure.
Another question is regarding the paper files that you currently have. I know some of you have quite a few. Once you go through those documents, if you upload the information into the Virtu system, you can destroy that piece of information that's in paper form. But let's say you have people who are currently inactive, they're not volunteering at the parish anymore, they don't have a Virtus account, you're going to want to hang on to that because that's the only confirmation we have that a background check has been done and that they've signed off on the forms. Okay. And it would be very difficult to contact people 3 or 4 years after they left the parish and say, oh, can you please create an account? So upload the information for all of your current employees and volunteers. And then once that information is uploaded, you can destroy the paper copies.
All right. Well, again, we'll make sure that you have all the information that you need to access, again, the functionalities. Julie, like you mentioned, is going to be providing information as well. So I think if there's any other questions, if not, I think we're ready to.
There was a question regarding substitute teachers in the applicant tracking system. Those are 2 completely different systems that are not integrated. So they will continue to have to work through both systems. Okay, I think that's it. That's all the questions we have online. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. If you do have questions, don't hesitate to contact us at safeenvironment@dioceseofjoliet.org or contact myself or Maria. I want to thank Pat Neal and Julie Berg for joining us today and going through all of this information. It's very helpful. And everyone have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Molly.
And for those who are local for protecting God's children,